back in the day to have access to that. My dad was Army and did a lot of radar and guidance systems and stuff like that. And so I just kind of grew up looking over his shoulder to see what he's doing. I took an interest to it. And so he bought me a book, Radio Shack, AC/DC Theory of Electronic Circuits. And so I started learning that. And eventually I started hacking hardware. Hacking in its truest form is modifying something to do something it wasn't intended to do. And by the time I was 12, I had combined 2 motherboards for an Apple IIe system, 2E, and basically made a parallel processor without even realizing what I had done. I just wanted to see if I could get the 2 boards to talk to each other. Apple caught wind. They actually sent somebody out to my house, 12 years old, paid me $5,000 and took it away. So I don't know what evolved of that, but that was kind of my start. And then about the same
job?
no, it wasn't Jobs. No, I wasn't that lucky. I did speak with them on the phone. I do remember that, but that was a long time ago. So about that same time, I also heard about a certain agency somewhere around Central Maryland or something. And I really took an interest in what they did and decided right then and there, 12 years old, 13 years old, that's what I was going to do when I grow up. And there was a particular program over there that had caught my attention. And so I set to learning communications and networking. Now this is before Ethernet. This is before the internet, but basically getting computer systems to talk to each other through modems, through coax, Ethernet when that came along, satellite communications, learning how those worked and everything. Just, you know, being a nerd locked in his room as a teenager with no friends. High school, that turned into a job. I started I understood networking at a level that the college courses for it, certificates didn't exist. And so it made it really easy for me to get a job at the time because I was still 17, 18 years old. It was like, go deploy these computers in the network, and then when there was problems, usually the project manager, who was, our project manager, they would come and say, we need some trouble, we're having some trouble getting these systems to talk, and I would help them out. Did 2 or 3 of those, got recommended to the temp agency that I was working through for, something more advanced through those clients. And I ended up working as a consultant. The question, or trying to get Bob's attention? Somebody's attention. Sorry. Ended up working in retail commercial banking and big 3 auto manufacturing. One of my first consulting gigs was for United Blood Service out of Scottsdale. And my job was to go and figure out what's wrong with their with their help desk. They did an internal audit, and their help desk was the worst across the company worldwide. Tickets would take a year to get closed and everything. So I learned to look at things at a broad spectrum, get the big picture of what was going on within the organization, not just what was wrong with the technology they were using. How were they using it? How did that affect other positions, other internal organizations, internal customers? And my job was to move people around so that they were doing things that they were better suited to, and blend the technology and bring them up to speed in the technology that was emerging at the time. And it was a fluke success. But that's what launched my career. So I did 15 years I was doing that. I was one of the first called technical architects in America. It was some new concept that CSC came up with in Europe that was really kind of promising back then. I did some SAP implementations, got to travel around the world. That's how I got into government contracting. And then the economy kind of took a crap, and a few other things were happening. CSC had purchased a couple of companies, and they were doing some downsizing and restructuring, and they were going through a series of layoffs. And I knew I never finished my degree, so I'm dangling out there by a thread in between projects with no degree. And the sign was clear that, you know, I need to go back to school. And the military offered its best options, so that's what I ended up doing. I've been called. I remember my first ship. I wasn't allowed to go anywhere near ADP because I would show up the senior chief, and but I wasn't even an IT. I was an electronics technician, and I hated my job. But I heard through my friends in that department that they were having a real hard time getting the people to pay attention to training. And so one day the senior chief and I, who were constantly going at it with each other, she laid out the department that, look, there's a certain person on this ship who's forgotten more since he's been here than you'll ever learn in your entire career. And my friend in the back said, oh, you mean Petty Officer Clark? So I said, we'll never say that name in my department again. But that's what it was. And then she ended up actually recommending me, having the opportunity to convert to cryptology. And she actually wrote my recommendation and went to the detailers and the community manager and says, you need to take this guy. Don't let his application slip away. And so I became a cryptologist, direct convert, no school required, and I ended up at the agency that I wanted to work at, and got to see a whole nother perspective on technology. Of course, the clearance helped, and it was kind of the foundation for Kaydelon. So I started Kaydelon in 2002 while I was deployed. So going back to when I was like 16 is when I formed my first company. Not so much because I wanted to be the CEO of me. I did have a ring to it, but because at the time when I'm building systems, there were no Dells, and HP wasn't as big as they were in PC manufacturing. So that's what I started out as a hobby to make my spending money in school. And I actually ended up building all the PCs for a cardiology hospital in Arizona, like 6,000 systems right before I went into the military. And so I started as a hobby, basically so I could get the parts at cost and didn't have to pay a tax on it, or pay not to avoid the tax, but I didn't have to pay the retail sales tax. I could pay it at wholesale and just do it as a use tax, and I ended up saving a lot of money that way on my own stuff. And then it exposed me to a lot of different kinds of hardware. So that, combined with the consulting to see how different companies were using hardware in different ways, laid the foundation for Kaydelon. So I started Kaydelon as a consulting company, and I learned, because I was deployed, that I really had to lean on other people. And so what I would do is I would go online, I'd get a contract, a gig. At the time they were just gigs. And obviously I couldn't be there myself because I'm in the middle of who knows where. So I had to find somebody who could do it for me. So I got pretty good at managing people in distributed locations and narrowing down the skill set that I needed. If I needed somebody to write an app, I'd find somebody who had experience writing that kind of app. I'd 1099 them and then cut them loose. Give them a call once in a while if I needed support for something. For hardware services, I would get 2 or 3 people in an area. I actually had a couple of college students that were roommates that did a lot of work for me, and one of them was a programmer and the other one was going to school for computer science, and I could just send them projects as I needed to, and they would design something that my customer would request, and they would send it out. I'd write up the documentation for it. As a technical architect, that was my primary job, was high-level documentation and system engineering. And then I package it up and send it off to the customer. And in 2010, I landed back in the States. 2009, 2010, I incorporated and shifted the focus of the company to technical engineering services. So I went back to my childhood roots of electrical engineering communications and my experience in the military with RF, wireless communications, satellite communications, stuff like that. And I founded the company on wireless communications, network engineering, and electrical engineering. So what we do today is kind of a hybrid approach to solving hard technical problems. Companies just can't go to the store and buy a solution for what their technical problem might be. It just doesn't exist. So I find technology that does exist. I find new ways to mold it into a solution for them. I work with manufacturers and engineers to modify something so that it will fill the gap. Or I bring multiple vendors together and we build something from scratch. And the best way to describe it, I've been called the DARPA for small business, or like Raytheon, Booz Allen's, these massive firms that are doing billion-dollar contracts. They have to charge that because they have 60,000 engineers in a closet waiting to be taken off the shelf and used, but they still got to pay those salaries. I don't do that. I do the same thing they do at a much smaller scale, and I do it for private industry as well as government. So by doing that, I can keep my costs way low, but still provide and draw from a lot of those engineers are the same guys that I'm subcontracting. So I'm doing the same thing they are at a much lower entry point for them, and I can provide, it's a recurring theme here, the focus on the customer, going back to learning how to view problems at the 80,000 foot level and seeing the big picture of what it is that they need to accomplish. Maybe 7 times out of 10, the customer doesn't truly understand their own problem that they're trying to solve. So I had, for example, the State Department needed a global communication system that was secure. And their problem definition was, we just need a secure communication system. But then after, working in their organization, in that sub-organization of the department, and truly understanding what it was that their mission was, because they didn't really talk about it. So I sat in their office basically for 2 weeks and shadowed their employees and went with them and saw what it was that they were doing and said, is what you're trying to solve this? With the director, and we came to a better defined, broader definition of what the problem was. From there, I was able to prototype a communication system. We actually took it down to Antarctica to test it out, and it was one of only 2 prototypes that actually worked. So I won the contract. So I ended up installing the system. We built a number of systems, got to install it on a fleet of aircraft, which is really cool. Because you don't just put it on the airplane, you have to test them. So we did some pretty neat test flights. That drew the attention of some other agencies that were doing their own things, and that leads to additional contracts and stuff like that. But talking to people, building those relationships. I have a customer that's overseas, just called me 2 o'clock this morning, so sorry if I'm rambling and a little tired. It's because I've been up pretty much all night. They want me to go work for shipyard in Norfolk this weekend, so I'm in the process of trying to plan that trip. But it's that kind of thing. Just listen to the customer, see the bigger picture of what it is that they're trying to accomplish, and then take a step back and figure out, as opposed to just, here's an opportunity to sell my product or service, how can I value add that? As a small business, that's what you bring to the table, those relationships and that value add. That's probably one of the biggest things that I can convey to a startup or somebody who's in a small business that's looking to grow to the next level.
Parallels between what you.
It's very similar. We're actually in very similar businesses.
Yeah.
I focus.
You're either going to be competing or joining partners.
We'll partner. I don't believe in competition. I don't believe in competition. There's always room to partner. I'm sure there's things that we can use them and vice versa.